Caline,
Yasmin,
welcome to Pivot.
thank you so much.
This has been a long time coming.
Very much so.
We're here, you're visiting, I caught you.
Yes.
And just welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here. I've been waiting for this moment to be here
Have
with you for a
you?
while. Well, because I love what you do.
Well, we have, I think on our sort of more spiritual journeys, we have a lot in common.
Very much.
We have sort of stepped into this journey maybe at different times, but I have to say how we met, because I think the stronger part of my journey kicked off with you. So I was invited to a dinner who was hosted by a friend of ours called Zina, and she told us that, well, she invited 4 people and told those 4 people that they had to bring a random guest.
Yeah.
So I went to the dinner, I brought my random guest, my friend Karina, and you happened to be at the dinner. So I don't know if you were invited and then you were invited
and then I brought a friend.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you brought someone, and then me and you really connected at that dinner. And then I don't think I spoke to you again after meeting you there for at least a year.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe
it was
more.
such a long time ago, I feel now.
But we connected.
Yes.
I liked you. We vibed.
Definitely.
And
we still
then-
do.
Yeah, we still do. And then so much happened after that, like personally, with sort of,
Yes.
I don't know, you kicked off a change within me by introducing me to somebody who is now like family to me called Joelle. But that's for
too.
maybe
Yes.
a conversation in the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love this.
So, Caline,
Yes,
you're a journalist.
I am indeed.
Can you tell me if this environment feels natural to you? Because
To
you're
a certain
journalist?
extent.
Yeah?
To a certain extent. I mean, I am obviously a writer first and foremost, but I have been getting used to speaking. So, verbal journalism, let's say. But yes, I love these environments. I'm all about these. I feel like this is journalism 2.0, to be honest.
Who are you a journalist for?
So I was working at the National for 8 years.
Okay.
When I first moved to Dubai in 2010. And then I quit in 2018, and then I started freelancing. So I worked for Arab News. I was working for them as a retainer. And then that lasted about a year or so. And then since then, it's been a bunch of different organizations, whether think tanks, universities, PR agencies, newspapers. You can actually wear so many different hats when you're a freelance journalist. While if you are employed, you can only work for that specific newspaper. So I do wear many hats, and yeah, I have different projects here and there. So it's been really fun.
So that allows you, the ability to work remotely.
To work remotely, which has been a blessing, to be honest, because of course I'm not entirely based in Dubai. And I think having that freedom, I mean, to be honest, of course, when you take a leap and you work for yourself, quote unquote for yourself, then it's really, I mean, it's a bit hard in the beginning, but I always tell people the bigger the leap, the higher the reward.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say, I would never go back to employed life after this. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It's definitely just not for me.
So you are able to work remotely. You currently live in Lisbon.
I do.
And from what I've understood and seen and witnessed with you, you've moved around. You grew up in Monaco.
Yes.
You moved to Dubai at some point, lived here for 15 years?
Yeah, 11.
11 years.
I'm still technically a resident here, but it's been 14 years now, yeah.
So there's this triangle between Monaco, Lisbon, and Dubai. And that's, I
Exactly.
think, your little triangle of love.
Of love and happiness,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I was born in London, but London's not a part of that triangle. London, it'll be really just like touch in, touch out. I haven't been in 4 years. But that triangle and adding a little bit of Beirut in the mix is like my ultimate happiness.
So do you feel growing up in Monaco as an Arab? So tell me a little bit about this, because I'm a mix, obviously moved around, and how does it feel today at this age to have been raised in Europe and then sort of be in between back in the Middle East? Like, how has it affected you? How has it molded you?
It's really interesting, actually, because I mean, I've lived 24 years in Europe when I was younger. So about 16 of that was in London. and about 8 was in Monaco. But
Okay.
the formative years were in Monaco. I was a teenager there. And I always gravitated towards anyone who looked Middle Eastern or felt Middle Eastern, you know, my Armenian friends, my Syrian friends, whoever kind of felt that. Of course, I have friends from all different nationalities, but I just felt something in me that, I was always gravitating more towards that. Of course, my father's Lebanese, my mother was originally Palestinian, so I've always had this at home, like Arabic food and, you know, some Arab values. But still, growing up in Europe, it's a very different environment, and it was very hard for them to kind of apply like Arab rules when you're surrounded by, you know, Europeans.
I think a lot of Arab parents face that when they're raising their kids in the West.
100%.
And
It's a huge thing, you know. Even back in the 80s, it was a huge thing, and we would always have these conversations with my mother about what's, you know, right and what's wrong, and, you know, just try your best to be this way if you can, you know, because you are kind of a bit molded by the environment you're in.
Definitely.
And I also loved that. I love Europe and the mentality there and all of that, but there are parts of my culture that I also adore. So I remember when I first moved to the Middle East, then that's when I realized, like, oh, actually, this is pretty cool, but I don't entirely fit in either, right?
Yes.
I always say there's this question of identity, that I'm not entirely European, but I'm not entirely Arab, right? I'm somewhere in the middle, like a lot of people our age as well. And so I ended up, you know, my mother used to always tell me, of my 3 children, you're the most Arab, you know? And so she would always...
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And she would always tell me, you know, I was meant to move to Beirut initially for just 3 months, because I started off my journey in the Middle East in Beirut. And it was meant to just be 3 months. And then, you know, she kept telling me, I'm worried you'll never come back. And I was like, no, it's just 3 months. And lo and behold, it turned into 12 years, because I did 1 year in Beirut and then moved to Dubai for 11. So there's definitely some truth in that. But of course, I feel like I take the good from the Middle East, what I love and resonate with the most, and I take the good from Europe, because there are a lot of things in Europe that I adore. You know, just being able to walk everywhere, feeling relatively safe, to be honest. Of course, Dubai is a very safe place, but if we're looking at the whole Middle East, not quite, right? And just stability, and it's just being in I don't know, you know, freedom of thought, freedom of expression. I love that. I mean, my thesis at university was about freedom of speech, because I am a journalist after all. So just having that, you know, living with that. And of course, nature in Europe, for me, living in Portugal, it's just incredible. Even the south of France, so much to offer. But still, I come here, and sometimes, I mean, I have wonderful friends there, but of course, my friends here, they really feel like family, you know. I've lived here for so long, and there's that warmth to them, you know. And I love the food in this region. I'm a foodie. I'm a massive foodie. I love to cook Lebanese food, and I love to eat it, especially Lebanese or Palestinian at this point. It's all this, you know, similar to me. But yeah, there's good in both. And I realize that you don't have to pick and choose. You can have whatever it is you want.
I agree with that, because I feel you're always kind of pressured to choose and say what you prefer and which one is better and which one is worse. And I don't believe in that at all. It's
Neither
like
do I.
you take the positive and
of course,
the great parts of everywhere that you are. You have to.
100%. This is your life. You choose how you want to live it.
Yes.
You don't have to fit in any box.
So if you had kids today, where would you raise them?
I would say Portugal. Yes, even though I've only been there for just a bit over a year now. I mean, at least from my experience so far, what I love about Portugal is that it's so raw. And I've realized, although I grew up in an environment like Monaco and London and Dubai, which are polar opposites pretty much to Portugal, very different, right? Of course, it's nice to have nice things, I'm not gonna lie. And that's very nice. I would say maybe 20% of my time. But the rest of the time, having this raw nature around, and just, it feels so real to me. And it reminds me a bit of, you know, growing up in London when we would go to the park and play with sticks and stones, you know what I mean? Like that was about it. So I realized that my nature is actually drawn towards that. And I would want, if I have children, for them to really be immersed in that as well.
In nature.
To be in touch with that. Of course.
Apparently we're not supposed to say nature. We're supposed to say earth.
Earth.
Yeah.
Mother Earth. Exactly.
Exactly.
So, but of course, constantly visiting the region and having them be in touch with these different parts of me, you know, I would love that for them. if that happens.
I see that for you.
Thank you.
I really, well, if you decide to go down that journey,
We'll
I see that for you.
Life will show me.
So you are 39.
I am. I turned 39 in April.
You're a 39-year-old woman who is really at this point of life, enjoying her life, cultivating a life that you want.
Very much
like you've
so,
created
yes.
this for yourself.
Yes.
I don't feel you sit there and have waited for anything to come to you. And when things have not gone the way that you, let's say, when things haven't worked out, you have never sat there as a victim and said, well, okay, we've all cried a little bit when these things happen, but you have not sat there for very long and questioned and, you know, indulged that too much. I feel like you pick yourself up and you move forward. And that's something I respect so much about you. And I think I've seen you go through some pretty tough times in the short time that we've known each other.
It's been a journey.
So you're a 39-year-old woman, and this is an age which is, there's a lot of pressure for women in general in their 30s. But now you're at this point where I would say kids must be on your mind, or being able to have kids must be something that you think about. We haven't discussed this, so I'm just,
of course,
you know, throwing it out there and kind of putting you on the spot.
Definitely.
You don't have to answer.
I'm an open book.
Which is why I'm going.
Yes.
That's why I'm
you
going
know you
for
can
it.
go anywhere with
I'm
me.
going for it.
You can take me anywhere.
Yeah. So
yeah.
As at your age and at this point of your life, what are your thoughts on kids? And is it something that you want? And if it's something that you want, what are you thinking? Because this isn't, you know, we have a biological clock. Let's just put it that way. And maybe I'm being that annoying pressuring person, but
it takes a lot to pressure me.
I think a lot of women are in this point of their lives, and a lot go down the egg freezing route. There's a lot of questions going on. So I just want to put it to you and see what you have to say.
It's an interesting question because I've always been obsessed with being married and having children ever since I was young. I really think Disney played a very big role for me in that. And obviously my upbringing, right? Still being raised by a Lebanese mother, Lebanese Palestinian. And so I was obsessed with that. I was engaged when I was 29, broke it off when I was 30, and then that kind of made me realize that I was actually maybe a bit more interested in the idea of marriage, and that in itself is just not the right way to go about things. And then a few years later, I met someone and got married for the right reasons, definitely. And then the only reason we actually got married was to have children, funnily enough. And then we were together, I would say, overall for 4 years and married for 2. And in the end, we divorced. And that actually really, I mean, we divorced very close to the time when we were preparing to have children, which is very interesting. And then when we divorced, I actually completely let go of the idea of having children, because I do know there's something inside me that is very convinced that, like, I mean, not to toot my own horn, and I want to stay as humble as possible, but I know I would be a great mother. I know it's in
yes, you would.
I mother all my friends. I'm like always the mama of the group. I think of it's part, I mean, I even know in, you know, part of who I am, my design, let's say, I was born to be a mother. But I mean, of course, I have 2 cats. I'm a mom to them. But I really accepted the idea now that life will tell me if I'm meant to be or not. I'm actually comfortable with both scenarios, and I feel that that's a very powerful place to be at, because you're okay with whatever happens. Yes, I mean, I'm still in between 2 minds at this very moment, because I'm very convinced by one scenario, but I love my life today. I'm having so much fun, like, and it's, I don't know, it's just wonderful to be, I mean, to not be a mother at my age right now, at the point that I'm in my life right now, at least, because I've constantly been with people, you know, with a partner for 20 years on and off, and I've rarely ever been single. I've been single only 9 months, and so in that period of time, it's crazy, right? So I did it the other way around, although there's no right way of doing things, right? There's just your own way, and so now I'm truly enjoying it, and I think even more so than if I were single when I was 20, or, you know, not let's say,
Your perspective is highly different.
my perspective is highly different. And I really feel like, I mean, I know that with, science, technology today, a lot more can happen. I have not frozen my eggs. I don't plan on doing it. I feel like life has enough ups and downs, and I don't want to inject more ups and downs because it plays with your hormones. And for me, this is a personal belief. Like, I just believe that if I want something enough, it will happen, And so if I get to that point, and of course, context matters a lot. Like, if you meet someone who makes you want to have kids, then I'm all for it, you know? I have a friend who gave birth to her first child at 44. So I still have a few years down the line, and life has shown me that so much can happen in a year.
You said something that I want to pick up on, because I don't want to forget.
Of course, yes.
But you said we actually got married to have kids.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, in Dubai, it's technically illegal to have children.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yes. Well, at least at the time. I don't know what the rules are now. But I know that at the time, yes, that you could not have children without being married. And in a way, I think also we both did kind of want to get married as well. We came from somewhat traditional families. And so getting married seemed, I did want my big fat white wedding. Like, I wanted to wear the dress, and I got that. So I kind of got that out of my system in a way. I mean, I love celebrating, me. Like, I will celebrate my birthday over a few months just because why not? Such is life. Like, you make it what you want to,
I really think that celebrating wins, no matter how big or small, is so important and not done enough. So it's something 100%. That I've really focused on over the last year. Even if it's just a celebration within yourself, or just, I don't know, I feel you really have to, in that moment, celebrate it and be thankful for it, because then it calls more in.
100%.
It invites more of that in. Of
course, 100%. And so I believe that you can celebrate your love with someone without necessarily being married if you don't choose that. It depends on where you live and what your beliefs are. But I'm not die hard on anything right now. Life has taught me to become a lot more fluid. And I love that.
Love that answer.
Thank you.
So, Caline.
Yes.
Human design.
Yes.
Some people be like, what is that? Some people are more open and aware of what that is, because I think there's been a bit of a buzz. Like, actually, since you taught me about it, I've heard a lot more about it. So I don't know why that is, or maybe things just pop up on your phone. It has, I feel, picked up. But it is one of sort of the older modalities that people have used to understand the design of your makeup and like what kind of person and personality and character and everything that you are. So I don't want to butcher human design, so I'm not going to keep talking about it. Can you tell me a little bit about human design and why you decided to get into this parallel to your journalism career?
So I've been, let's say, on somewhat of a spiritual journey for the past 10 years. And so it just, before I get into that, I'll tell you a bit what human design is about if you want. So human design is basically a bunch of, old wisdom traditions that come together, and they tell you who you are consciously and unconsciously at birth. All right? So in a nutshell. So you find out basically what your blueprint is, what your nature was when you were born. Life experience may have changed you, but your nature stays the same. You can transcend it. I believe you can, and I've experienced this myself.
Okay.
You can transcend. Yes, there are some parts, with enough practice, you can.
Okay.
You're not bound to anything. Because I always tell people human design boxes a lot, but energy has taught me you can unbox.
Well, you said the word blueprint, and blueprint seems extremely solid and not fluid.
Of course, but I think, you know what I think I've become more of an expert in my life, or at least what I try to master, is like injecting a lot of fluidity in my discipline.
Yeah.
And I'm really all about that. It's never for me just black or white. It's always a bit of everything. You know what I mean? And so yes, there are some things you can keep your strengths and all that. You can harness your strength, but I believe that you can transcend and grow and really work towards improving your areas of weaknesses. For me, there's no good, there's no bad. You're just uniquely who you are, and you are your authentic self. And it's all beautiful in itself, because it's all here to help you grow as a person.
So question, what would I gain, although I've kind of dabbled in it with you. We haven't done a proper session though. But what would I gain? What would somebody gain from coming to you and doing their human design chart?
Well, I think a lot of people who come to me, they just feel seen and understood. You will understand these things that you may have felt growing up and even until today, there are some things, I mean, the most important thing I tell people is that you then understand what is conditioning in your life and what is truly you, so that you can then get rid of the conditioning and really focus and just whoever tries to sway you in society or in life, you can then just say, well, no, actually this is me, and I like that, and that's how I plan on living, and that's a very powerful place to be at. So it's a very empowering tool, and helping you also direct your life, because then you enter an incredible flow, and then you start to attract everything that is truly meant for you and everything that you actually want in life. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, it's an incredible tool. So how I got into it is that I have been on somewhat of a spiritual journey for the past 10 years, starting with energy healing as a client with Joelle, as you know. And so she has been incredible at helping guide me towards creating my best life. Yeah. And, I realize what I love to do. Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's where we relate. One of the big points we relate. But
I need to interject here.
Of course.
Me too.
What I've realized is that I love understanding and studying old wisdom traditions and making them young and fresh and modern and new and easy to understand. Yes, relatable. Exactly.
Because I think people get really freaked out and a bit turned off by...
And it's very complicated sometimes.
It's complicated, but there's also so many things now that it's like what works,
you can get lost in the sauce.
And again, I think you have to go through as many as you want to figure out what works for you, because not everything works for everybody. Exactly. But what I like about human design is that it's not necessarily something that even needs to work for you. It's an explanation of you. Exactly. In a way.
Exactly. And you can choose to take it or not. It
opened my eyes massively.
Me too.
I was like, oh.
That's why.
I get it now. And then with my kids ones, remember, I was like, oh.
Exactly.
Okay. And it actually, for parents listening, doing your kids' charts is probably one of the best things I've done with you. Even though, again, it wasn't full, but
it was still the beginning.
It was still the beginning, but what you gave me was just so much insight and allowed me to not fight things that are pretty much, don't want to say set in stone because that goes against what you just said, but very much a blueprint of who they are as people.
Part of their nature.
Massive guidance.
100%. I mean, the beauty about doing children is that they are still in their rawest form as a human being. They're not conditioned yet. So when I mean, children are some of my favorite things because I sit with the parents and then I literally tell them what, this newborn is like. And just to try to raise them as close to that as possible. You cannot, of course, life will throw things in your way. No one is immune to anything. But if we can get as close as possible to your nature, then why not? Just it helps then. It helps a lot more. So essentially, human design came into the mix because I then started diving into meditation, and I did a course on that, and yogic philosophy, which I also adore. I went into hypnosis, which I know you do as well, and so all of these different things, science, the power of the mind, I believe in it all. They are all different spiritual language that say the same thing for me, but then when human design came into the mix, I realized for me, I mean, I always call it the first international spiritual language because it really speaks to everyone and it has so many different modalities in it. Astrology, the Hindu chakra system, the Kabbalah, tree of life, science, human genetic coding, I Ching, ancient Chinese mathematics. There's so much that goes into it. So a lot of people, it speaks to a lot of people in that sense,
I think it speaks to the more science, the scientific minds.
Very much so.
Because if you're sort of a non-science mind like me and you're a lot more open and a little bit more creative and I want to say artsy, but if you're a little bit more inclined to that, then I don't think you question as much. You kind of just take it in.
Exactly.
And in order for these things to even have any effect, it won't if you have these doubts. So
if you have doubts, you
either
block
do it properly
or you resist
and openly, or don't.
Exactly.
But the good thing about this for science minds is that they can understand it a little bit more in terms of, I would say, even physics,
100%.
But something about human design that was interesting was when I was going through, I don't remember my chart or one of my kids or something, was that there's 7 chakras.
There are, yes.
But in human design,
there are 9.
There's 9. That was interesting.
Because we've evolved into 9 chakra beings.
We've evolved into 9 chakra beings. I had no idea. No. That's so new to me. And yeah, I mean, that's just my little take. I was like, why are there 9 boxes and shapes on this paper? So
exactly.
Yeah, evolution of
the human being.
Human being is
fascinating.
Fascinating.
I know. I love it.
I could basically talk about this for another...
Tell me about it.
For the rest of the time.
I know.
But yeah, so human design is what you're doing in parallel to journalism.
Exactly, yes.
And are you enjoying it?
I'm loving it. I mean, of course I love writing. That was my first love, as I say. But my true passion really lies in anything related to helping people in this life, helping them navigate through their own lives. So human design falls into that. Crystal healing does as well. I started that last year. And all of these things, I mean, and it's constantly growing, and I'm going to let it take its course and grow into whatever it's going to grow into. But it has been so fulfilling to work in this, because, you know, if you can be that one person who helps, you know, just one person in their lives, then my job on this planet is done. You know, I know in my human design, this is a big part of my purpose. And it's all about, my profile, which is who you are consciously, unconsciously at birth in terms of your personality traits. In my profile, for me, I want others to succeed as much as I want it for myself. And I know this about me. And I think that that's why it works so well, you know, with who I am. And I'm not the only one, of course, but I know that this is my path. There's no... Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to want people to succeed equally as to your own success?
Because we are all connected. We are all one. I believe that. If someone fails and you don't, we're not separate, you know. If we all win together, for me, we are all interconnected. If we were meant to be alone, we would be living on a planet on our own, in a silo. You know, we are all here to help one another. And I believe that's why we are all here. We're here to remind one another about things that we might have forgotten, but that are actually deep within us, you know? We are just a big interconnected family, all of us, no exception. You know, I see the world that way. No matter who says what or who does what, for me, I win if we all win.
Yeah.
You know, so
collective winning.
Collective winning, yes.
I love that. It's basically suggesting that anytime someone is winning, it adds to our collective win. I wish people understood that more.
I know, me too. It's getting better, but sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, which is why, you know, sometimes, I mean, with everything going on in the region, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of polarity. And I try to not fuel that fire, to say, you know, anger fuels anger, hatred fuels hatred. And what you can do, and the best thing you can do for anyone on this planet right now, and especially in the region, is to really keep your vibration as high as possible. A lot of people will say you're selfish, but it's not true, because you are actually raising the frequency on the planet just with you. I mean, imagine if every single person in the world did that. What would happen? Rather than letting your emotions take over. And of course, I have a lot of compassion for everything that's happening. And, you know, I can understand that it can be difficult, yes. And it's about feeling that, but not allowing it to suck you into its vortex, because then you're not really helping anyone, not even yourself.
How do you suggest to people to keep your frequency high?
As much as possible. I mean, of course, life is always a balance. You need the lows as much as you need the highs.
Obviously, there's normal life, and we go through ups and downs.
I'm not for that toxic positivity of we're always happy.
No, of course not. But when you're in sort of, you open it up Instagram, and what we're seeing on Instagram is so mind-blowingly brutal, and I don't even have the words. Like, what we're seeing isn't normal, right?
Course.
Like, we're literally seeing the worst of the worst
100%
that I've ever seen,
of course,
since I was born,
of course,
happening to the Palestinian people.
100%.
So we're looking at that, and there's many other horrible things happening in the world as well, right? Like, we have to also address that. It's not just one,
of course,
singular thing. But at the moment, this is
and we're in the region.
We're in the region.
There's a lot
You're
of Palestinian.
I'm married to a Palestinian. I grew up in Jordan, like next to the. I mean, for whatever reason, I think like our focus, or at least mine and a lot of others, is very much focused on what's happening
Of
to
course.
Palestine. So I open up Instagram, I'm watching videos, I start crying, or I'm just filled with absolute rage. And this happens daily.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think being a journalist in the Middle East for so long has helped me to detach myself from the news as much as possible, to understand that, I mean, to try as much as possible to not, you know, take on board everything that's happening, because you can relate and have compassion without, you know, absorbing everything about the situation.
So you're saying you can relate, have compassion, and help as much as possible.
And help
in
as much
every
as
single
possible
way.
while being detached. It's being detached with love, right? And so it's not, no, I don't want to see this and running away from this. No, but at the same time, you are what you consume. So yes, everything you're going to watch, you tend to, you know, will affect you.
Yeah.
So I'm very, let's say, hygienic with what I watch. I curate my Instagram. And I know that, I mean, I'm probably the only journalist who doesn't watch the news, who stopped watching the news actually when COVID started to happen. I know I will always find out what is happening in the world through people, and I do. It has been the case. But I don't need to watch graphic things. I don't need to, you know, dig my own grave in a way, you know?
So people's response to that, because I've had conversations with people about this,
people get so angry.
No, well, it's not that. It's more that they will feel guilty for not watching this stuff because they feel like they're not doing their part, and these people are suffering so much in Palestine. So they feel like the only way to like empathize is to suffer.
And that's not the case at all.
Yeah,
you're actually not helping them at all. So I think it's a skewed belief. First of all, guilt is not even a real emotion. Actually, it's made up by human beings. We all do that, and it comes from a different place. But anyway, the point is that if you want to help, of course, it doesn't mean ignore it. I'm not for, because that's like bypassing and gaslighting and all of that stuff. I'm not for that. It's about, you know, understanding what's happening, but you are what you consume. And so if you sit and watch the news all day long, obviously you're going to end up depressed, you know? There are terrible things happening all over the world. But I do say that whether you're going to check or not, whether you're going to watch the images or not, it's going to happen anyway, right? And so might as well at least strengthen yourself as much as possible. Watch a bit if you feel the need to, but don't immerse yourself completely in this, because you're not doing anything to help the cause by doing that. Yes, you want to speak about it, by all means do, but maybe in a more mindful way. I've seen so much anger and hatred, and I understand that this is what people are feeling, but at the same time, then you have to understand that you are actively putting yourself in this position, and you can't blame yourself when you are depressed and low. So many of my friends I've seen in the past year have spiraled into depressions because of this. And it's like, well, you have a duty and a responsibility to yourself first and foremost to keep your vibration high as much as possible. It's not to say there aren't any lows, but you can manage that.
I don't think you can help if you're in that state. So
can't.
The best way to help is to make yourself as kind of strong as possible. But yeah,
happy as possible.
This is going to probably have a huge debate.
100%.
No, I disagree. And what are you talking about?
And I respect everyone's decisions and opinions.
I respect everybody's
decision.
You
do you, but I know what works for me. You know what I mean? And I know what has worked for a lot of people.
I will just say, like, feeling sick all day and trying to continue my life in any way has been so hard. So I try to find this balance, where I'm understanding, I'm there, I'm helping, but I'm also in a healthy mindset.
Exactly, because you need to show up for yourself, for your children, for your family, for your friends, for your own well-being, right? How is it helping anyone? For the collective. How is it helping anyone if you are below the ground? You know? So yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay. It's time for your pivot. Because I can see how much this is just booming.
I told you.
Our conversations are
I knew this was going to happen.
But I knew this was going to happen too. So before we get to the end of our hour, I really need to get onto your pivot.
Yes.
So Caline, can you please tell me about one or more pivots, it's up to you, that you feel have had an impact on your life, have gotten to you to this point today, that have put you at this table in this situation as 39-year-old Caline, who's sitting here like beaming at me and glowing and just looking so wonderful.
Thank you.
So yeah, please tell me about a pivot.
So I would say I have two, but I would say the first one was probably when I was 27. And it was when my mother passed away. So she, you know, I was a very different person then, extremely angry person. I was. And, you know, 2 weeks, I would say, before her death, she planted a seed in me that really changed the course of my life. And she really told me, I mean, she did realize that, you know, she had cancer. And so she realized that a lot of her harboring resentment and anger had led to essentially her passing in her current situation at the time. And, you know, she kept telling me, don't do like me. Don't hang on to these things when you're angry, because essentially this is what changes your physical body, and you will end up like this, you know? And so that really marked me. That was the first thing that led me to my spiritual journey a few years later, where I realized I don't want to end up this way either, you know? So I would say that was a first pivot. It took a while for the pivot to settle in, but you know, all you need is that one seed, you know, and that's exactly what my first one was. And that's when I started my spiritual journey a few years later, energy healing and all of that. And then,
do you think your mom was essentially trying to tell you that her sickness came from her emotions and repressed emotions?
100%.
Okay.
100%. I feel like
that's quite a powerful message for her to give you.
Definitely.
Like, at that
huge.
point.
I think life really humbles you, you know, 2 weeks before you kind of know that, you know, your life is ending, you really face yourself.
Wow.
You know, and so, and it was such a big thing for me because I do believe I was headed in that direction and probably even worse, you know.
Why do you think so?
Because I'm very similar to my mother in terms of, I mean, I'm a strong personality.
Like
I mean, we look identical,
wow.
which I love because I found that she was beautiful. But I also feel that I have a very strong personality. And I used to fight with life and everyone a lot. And I realized with time that...
You're also an Aries.
I'm an Aries, my moon is in Scorpio. So yeah, that it's a funky mix, but it's a mix that's very potent if you direct it towards good, right? It can go either way. It can be very extreme in that sense. And so thank God that actually happened, because it really helped then to direct me towards the greater good and to improving myself, because I could have completely spiraled
you were
after
at the fork in the road.
That was a fork in the road.
That was a fork in the road.
Definitely, it was a huge fork in the road because, I mean, I lost my mother over it. She was still my mother, you know? And so as much as I'm a big realist about death, I know it's inevitable and all of that stuff, still, she was my mother and it was a painful thing to go through.
There's no one more important in your life.
Of course. And I mean, of course, I had the time I had with her and I'm so grateful for it, but I always envisioned I would grow old and like my mom would be there, right? And so that didn't happen. But of course, other people came into my life, namely Joelle, who I believe is my spiritual mother, you know? So there are so many things that it all happens for a reason. I know that much. And I know that, you know, she did kick off my spiritual journey and I'm so grateful to her for that, you know? So I would say that was the first pivot in that sense. And then the other one, if you want me to move to the other one, the other one I would say is when I divorced at 36, which was about 3 years ago now. That was a big, I mean, the whole marriage was a pivot, to be honest. The whole marriage going through that was a pivot because I grew so much in that time. You know, I met my ex-husband. I had no clue who I was. I was just this lost little girl who was just jumping from one relationship to another and molding to what my partner wanted me to be, like almost, or fighting with them. You know, there was no in between. And so I didn't know who I was. And he actually, in a way, also triggered a bit my path into this because, you know, he's very good for when you start off your spiritual journey in that sense. And he told me, you know, you need to kind of know who you are and what you like. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought. So I kind of took that and I ran with it. And I ran with it. Thank God that I did, because it was, you know, It was a wonderful relationship, very loving. But I do think there were a lot of difficulties in the marriage. And I think that for me to feel like I was stuck in a situation where I couldn't get out of, it's either you go completely crazy or you do something about it.
Yeah.
And so thankfully I did something about it, and I really just went inwards, and I focused a lot on myself with all these, practices that I mentioned in the beginning. And that saved me. That saved me because I felt at one point that I was just living in a ring of fire, but that I was able to remain calm in it by the end of it. And that was a huge pivot. The most growth I've done in my life was in that marriage.
Did you surprise yourself?
Very much so. I mean, I realize I don't credit myself enough for this, and I've said it once in my life, but I'm very proud of myself for having gone through that, because it has actually shaped so much of who I am today. And I never thought there was no light at the end of the tunnel for me. I didn't understand how that situation could happen. For me, marriage was for life. I never thought I would divorce. But then when you understand that it's just an experience, it's not failure, it's actually just an experience that made you that much stronger, it was a game changer for me, a game changer, and it opened my life up in an incredible way. And I mean, I would do it all over again if I had to, because I needed that. 110%
Wow.
I would. Yes, a lot of people don't think so.
I don't think many people would say that.
Not at all.
Honestly.
I know.
I don't know one person that would
I
say
know.
that.
I would totally do it again. I needed that. I needed this man. I needed this marriage to then be able to I grew up. I became a real adult in that marriage. I realized I was a child when I arrived. And then when I left that marriage, it actually, my God, I started, because, they always say the bigger the leap, the higher the reward. And so I took that leap of faith. We ended amicably, and I was able to then attract so many incredible things in my life, not just in work, but in friendships, in my living environment, in love, in just so many things.
But so you don't think you could have attracted any of that while you were in that marriage?
I think no, because I did in the beginning. It's not to say this marriage was all bad. No, it's more that our relationship.
You didn't say it was all bad. You said it was very loving, and you said it was.
It was
I
very
think it's
loving.
What you needed in the time.
Yes, I always tell people in relationships, you either grow together or you grow apart. We grew apart. That's all it is. I mean, you always have a choice in life, but sometimes you have to accept that some people grow in a different direction, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you don't love them anymore or you hate them for that. That scares people, but of course. I mean, life is all about that. You think that you actually have security and all. This is an illusion. It's all an illusion.
I have to say something. I was talking to a friend about people going through spiritual journeys. And she said to me, but you know what I noticed, Yasmin? That anyone that goes through a spiritual journey gets divorced. And someone even said, another person in a different conversation was saying something along the lines of, everyone who starts yoga ends up getting divorced. And it's just so funny the way that it was generalized in that way.
Yeah, that's really funny.
I think what they mean, or how I could see it, is that, once you start a spiritual journey, it's kind of hard to get off that
a lot
train.
of changes happen.
A lot of changes happen to yourself.
Of course.
And you may
have a different pace.
You grow. Let's just put it that way. You grow, and if the person that you're with doesn't choose to go down, I'm not saying the same speed as you, but at least choose to do some work on themselves.
Of course, yeah.
Then you end up going like this.
100%.
You go down different paths.
Yes, but what I've learned from this is that, for me, the highest form of love is accepting if someone doesn't really want to do that. And you can love them anyway. Yeah. But, unconditional love, you have to give that to yourself first, right? And so if you don't give that to yourself, well, actually, you're just sacrificing your life ultimately, You are allowed, you can love someone and not be with them physically. I truly believe that. But if you don't give that love to yourself, you will just end up settling. And that's not kind of who I am, No. Yeah.
You've proved that. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I cut you off. You were telling me, did I cut you off?
I can't remember.
I interjected with a story.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, I think about how that led me to really fly from my own wings and do my own thing, because I did realize that when I first met him, I needed him and I wanted him. with time, I didn't really need him anymore. I wanted him. And then with time, I didn't need nor want. But then that you end up realizing that the best relationship you can have is the one with yourself.
Yeah.
Because that then shapes all the ones around you. And, people end up divorcing maybe because that's meant to be that's what's meant to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that everyone on a spiritual journey must divorce. I have seen examples in this life.
I don't agree with that.
No, exactly.
At all.
I've seen examples of people on spiritual journeys where the man is both people, the man and the woman, are very self-aware and they grow together, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed, and it is what gives me hope. And I know that there is,
that's a choice.
It's possible. It's a choice.
It's a choice, and it's a commitment, like how marriage is a commitment. I'm not saying that
compromise, yes. Sacrifice, no.
Yes.
They're two very different things.
Every single marriage is different.
You round the corners.
Yeah, exactly. But we can't just say marriage.
No.
Everyone's marriage is completely different. Their journey is completely different.
And you can't know it unless you're in it.
100%.
No one knows.
But I agree with you. I do believe you can grow.
You can.
There are ups and downs.
Of course.
But I just believe there are definitely ways to do this
100%.
together. Even if you're not necessarily doing it at the same speed or the same intensity.
Exactly. As long as you see something, that's enough evidence for you to keep going.
100%.
But the most important thing I believe is that love alone is not enough to sustain a relationship.
I concur.
Right? And so it's just like anything else. You need to maintain it. You need to give it love. You need to be there for one another, choose one another constantly, because if you don't, then it's bound for failure.
It goes back to choices. Like what choice you're making
You
each
have
day.
free will.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I always say life experience may change you along the way, but you have your nature, but you nurture your nature as well. It depends. But people have this choice, like we said. So for me, it still worked out wonderfully, because I just love the life I'm living today. Touch wood, I never thought at 39 I would be unmarried, without kids, divorced, having lost my mother, yet I'm at my happiest. You don't have to, whatever you think happiness looks like, it doesn't even have to be that.
Well, I think you had this vision of what happiness looked like, and every single one
I knew what happiness felt like.
But you had an image, like whether it was false or not. You had
in the beginning
of what happiness looked like, and you went through every one of those, and it kind of got like
of course
swept.
Well, you know how they say, make plans, God laughs.
Yeah.
You need to set an intention and then see where that goes. Be as detached of the outcome as possible, because then life actually shows you that it has a much better plan in store for you. And that's what I've been experiencing and witnessing through and through with everything that's happened. And that's exactly it. It doesn't happen to me. It has happened for me.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for it all,
Yeah, there's so many blessings in things not working out.
100%, but because in reality they are working out.
Exactly, it's not working out.
Of course, when you think in the beginning,
the way we're wired though, so we believe like, oh, that didn't work out, and
because it didn't go according to your plan,
or the shame I have with this, and it's like, no, this is perfect for you.
It's always perfect. You will just see it later on.
Totally.
You never see it in the spot, but if you have faith in life and you trust the process of it all, you will see it in the end, and you will understand that it all happened for you. That's it. It's as simple as that. Not easy, but simple.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be easy, I don't think.
I think life would be boring if it was. If it were, So, yeah.
Ooh. Those were really strong pivots.
Very much so.
Very strong, like life-altering pivots, honestly. And again, like yours are always forks in the road.
Always.
They're not. I wouldn't even call them pivots. It's
because
like
they're massive.
Yeah, you're making massive decisions.
Massive shifts. Like I divorced at the same time as I left the UAE after 11 years with my 2 cats and my whole life on my back. Like there were just so many things, and it feels sometimes that every time I get to a place where I'm stable, life happens, and then something. I'm hoping this pattern ends soon.
Does that make you nervous?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I think
that would really give me like...
I've started from scratch so many times because, I moved back to Monaco after Dubai for a year and a half. And then I dropped everything and moved all the way to Lisbon, where I visited only for a few weeks, and I fell in love with it. So I have had to start from scratch so many times that I'm becoming almost a pro at it, you know? I mean, as much as possible. I realize the key to everything is just letting go. Just let it go. You do the best you can. No matter how uncomfortable you become, it's actually teaching you how to be very resilient in that sense and start from scratch, but you build again. Life is so long. Yeah. It's a drop in the ocean ultimately. And I'm sure I will have more pivots, to be honest, to come.
But next year you can do this. No, you...
I feel like it's with time and age anyway, you learn to understand a lot of things and what works, what doesn't work, how to let go. And it just... happiness becomes a much quicker place to get to. You know what I mean? It's not to say I'm always happy. No, I'm still a human being, but it's just, let's say, easier to get back to it. You know what I mean?
Well done.
Thank you.
Caline.
Yes.
I want you to give listeners a piece of advice that you would give to anyone looking to just start to better themselves.
Yes.
We're like oversupplied with information and Instagram, and there's just too much going on.
There is.
Way too much, really. Yes. Like the information out there is actually becoming borderline confusing. And from someone who's been on this journey and, really changed as a person, what would you say are a few things that you would do to generally start the process of bettering yourself?
Start the process. I mean, you have to know that it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be the bravest thing you're ever going to do. And it's going to be also the most rewarding thing you're going to do. I think, to start looking inwards. And by that, I mean, you can start meditating. If that works for you, you can start, doing any kind of practices that you feel bring you in, internally. So, you could start to talk to a therapist. I really believe that everyone needs someone to talk to in this life. And a professional, a complete stranger who has no bias to tell you anything, yes or no. I think that's a good way to start. Hypnosis is also another one of them. Whatever you choose to do, energy healing is a huge one, of course, but like I say, not everything is for everyone. So you have to try different things and see what works. But of course, you have to really, spending time alone.
I was about to say, if it's not a healing modality of some sort, something a little bit more easily accessible,
more basic to the point. Yeah, when you first start up, you have to spend time alone. You have to do things that, I see what you mean. When I first started, like in the very beginning, when I had no clue.
Yeah, you have no clue.
You have to really know who you are and what you like to do. Like as simple as that.
But that's that
I didn't know. I didn't even know this in the very beginning, right? Like 10 years ago. But it can be very difficult.
It's like a who am I question.
Exactly. Well, you have to sit with yourself and really, try to do things on your own and see if you enjoy it. A lot of people find that it's very difficult to, I don't know, go to a restaurant alone or travel alone. That's a big one. Or like go to the cinema alone or go, to the beach alone. I've done all of these things and I can tell you it's amazing. Like it's uncomfortable in the beginning. I remember going to a restaurant in Dubai once on my own. That was in the beginning of my journey. And I went on my own. And on top of that, it was a resort. It was Bab al Shams. Like I just went there on my own because I wanted to make it a point to understand like, what do I like? And I went to this restaurant on my own and I was so uncomfortable and I put my phone away because, you'll just look at your phone when you're uncomfortable. And I just sat and I started looking at people in their eyes across tables and I was like, okay, this is me,
I need to do that.
Yeah, it's incredibly empowering because then you realize that you can walk anywhere and just be comfortable with yourself, So you have to put yourself in some uncomfortable positions to just find out what you like to do. If you don't try, you'll never know. Go to the cinema, go read some books, go to the beach, travel if you can. Like, do all these things that you would actually think of doing on a date. Take yourself on these dates and see what happens, and you will see how much fun you will actually have in the long run, I promise you. And this in itself raises your vibration. You don't have to do anything other than that. Then inject little things that you love to do in your day. And, you have to discover to know what you love, right? And so
being alone.
Being alone. This is the starting point of everything in life. if you cannot be alone.
Or learning how to enjoy to be alone.
Yes.
Because of course I don't think it would be enjoyable maybe the first few times.
Of course. And there are some people who are alone and they actually hate it, right?
Yeah.
So it's about enjoying being alone. But to be able to enjoy it, you need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to, it is going to be uncomfortable in the beginning because that's not how we are, kind of. People think we're not meant to be like that. But I think, you know, it was the Buddha that said, like, you need to spend at least 45 minutes on your own every day. And this is true. I mean, for me, it's a lot more than that, but it differs by person. But I feel like, yes, we are social creatures and we need people, but not 24/7. You need to be on your own and understand that there's so much life inside you. Like, go find out what that is and go. It is the best relationship I've ever had is the one I've had with myself. I kid you not. And this is what I've learned. Yes.
Yeah.
This is what happened to me after my divorce. This is truly what I learned along the way, that, oh my God, I didn't know I could have so much fun with myself. You know, of course, it's a lifelong journey. It's forever, right? It's not one of those like, that's it, I love myself. You know, no, I'm just going with it. But I can tell you, I would have never dreamed of you know, doing all the things I do today on my own. But that's the only way then you can attract a healthy then relationship in your life, healthier friends, because you are healthy inside of you. You know what you like, and you don't want to show up as a copy of someone else. You want to show up as your authentic self, right? So spending this time alone is key in finding out who this person is. Who are you living with day in, day out? You know, this vessel is your home. It's the most important thing.
That's, I think, what scares people. Like, I think they're a bit nervous to find that out.
Of course.
But yeah, even me, like I just, you don't know what's going to come up when you're literally just by yourself, not on your phone, not distracting yourself. So that's my plan for next week.
Good.
I will take myself for dinner.
Good.
I don't know about going to Babel Champs. That's like a bit
That's
much.
more of a commitment.
That's a commitment. Well, I'll take myself
That's like
for
phase
dinner.
2 of dating yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Or lunch or something like that.
Or lunch. Start
I'll update
small.
you on how that
Baby
goes.
steps. Baby steps is key. You know, treat yourself like you are a child, but also like you're taking yourself out on a date, and then see what happens. And you'll see, you'll be amazed.
I promise
at the
I'll
things.
update you.
Please do.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna be amazing. I know it.
Caline, this has been wonderful.
Really, truly, thank you.
This has been so amazing, and the time
Likewise.
flew.
I know.
And
in good company.
This was great.
I loved it.
I
Thank
want
you.
another one of these next year.
I would
to
love
see
to.
the next fork in the road. Hopefully, it doesn't have to be one.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully not. I mean, I feel like I'm a lot more settled now. So,
You seem
know.
really settled and
Yeah.
grounded.
I am. I'm a lot happier today.
And I'll see you in Lisbon.
Yes, I'm waiting for you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was
Cheers.
everything. Cheers.
Welcome to Pivot.
Thank you.